I think rather than having it be kind of let us bring exit planning to you, which is kind of had been the model, whereas we were an advisor, you would have certain outputs, you'd have presentations, you'd have documents, you would take that into a client meeting and sit down and talk with them about it. And that still probably is the prevailing model, right? But if you look into the future and you see, people who are more savvy, business owners who are more savvy and aware of this, they're going to want to more collaborate, right? They're going to be talking about this. This isn't something that you're going to introduce at the 11th hour anymore and come in and try to explain to them that, oh, by the way, you're not really ready to sell. Hopefully, we're going to have more educated business owners who are going to be wanting to participate all along.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out with my friend Aaron from Mouse. So if you're a certified exit planning advisor and have been around for a long time, you know his company. I think one of the, probably, honestly, certainly around longer than we've been around at EPI.
Right.
Founded in 1992.
92,
like
yeah,
so,
going way back.
So way back. Yeah. And I would say even before we started really forming the exit planning profession. So you were as a tool for maybe owners. I guess maybe that's my first question. We're just going to kind of open right up, is that in 1992, and then I'll get to your introduction, but in 1992, it's just kind of spur of the moment. The exit planning profession was really kind of came together in 96 with one of our competitors, Business Enterprise Institute, right, with the CEXP credential.
That's right.
That was John Brown.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for John Brown. I got his book on my shelf and everything, and because he's one of those industry titans, if you will. But so your product was founded in Australia in 1992. Do you know what was going on back then? Like what market they were serving?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. There's some ancient history. Well, I know some of it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, I wasn't there for all of that. I think I was still in high school for some of that.
Yeah, right.
So,
but
too, right. Yeah, that was a while ago. But part of it, I think we were selling financial products. We had a stock market product that is actually still sold today, Stock Market Plus, over in Australia. If you're one of our Australian listeners and you have a stock portfolio, check it out.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. Reselling other products. To your point, I think the exit planning piece came later, in terms of business advisory and that kind of stuff. Those early days, I don't think were as, they're not as focused as there was in the following years. Yeah, certainly in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, so I was saying it was founded by a gentleman named Peter Hickey. He was our first Australian SEPA.
Yeah.
And I always remember Peter kind of going back, and maybe that was when he was kind of retooling the product with what he learned.
Yeah.
Coming all the way, I think he came all the way to Chicago to take the SEPA program. But now, fast forward to just a couple of years ago, Aaron and his team bought Mouse and have, I think, really transformed it. Like, we've been hanging out for the actually past couple days together, and diving deeper into who Mouse is and who we can be together.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know Aaron, he's what I would say is a tech entrepreneur.
Yep.
And I think I would like to learn more about this Bomb Diggity. First of all, I want to talk about the name, right? Bomb Diggity, and why the name, but he has spent kind of his whole career in tech, and for me, somebody that's not a tech guy at all, I was like picking your brain at dinner yesterday about AI and maybe cybersecurity and all kinds of stuff. So we could probably, to your point, Joe Rogan this show and go about 3-4 hours, but we'll try to keep it within the hour.
We could. I'm ready to go Joe Rogan. Let's do it.
So I guess let's start at the beginning, right? So 16 years within this kind of tech space.
Yeah.
CTO, product development, and then during the pandemic, which is, I would say, pretty courageous in and of itself. You start your own firm called Bomb Diggity with the intention, from what I see, to go invest in other kind of tech platforms and high growth companies. So talk to me about that transition, and maybe throw in why the name Bomb Diggity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. So I had exited my second company just a few years before, and I had been looking for a business to buy for about a year. So Bomb Diggity Ventures is the full name, Bomb Diggity Ventures. We formed that as kind of a boutique private equity investment group. and we were interested in buying, obviously, a B2B SaaS business. That was my experience. That was kind of where I came from. I had just exited my second SaaS company. So to your point, been in technology for a long time.
Yeah.
And we looked for about a year. We had a couple of buy-side agents who were looking for us. And it took us a while. We actually made a few offers on some companies that did not go through.
Yeah.
And we were looking despite the pandemic, right? To your point about the pandemic. So, we felt, as you guys may remember going back to the pandemic, that tech was actually still surging in the pandemic,
Absolutely.
right? Everybody was doing better. If you were, everybody from online streaming services to Facebook, and you may remember they actually hired so fast during the pandemic that post-pandemic they had to make some cuts. I think there was
we were talking about this yesterday.
There was like just about everybody cut about 10,000 people, all the big guys, the Microsofts and Amazons and those guys, and Facebook's Meta. They cut 10,000 people afterwards. So they were hiring and tech was booming. So you say it's courageous, but we kind of felt like that maybe tech was more relevant than ever. People were spending more time in front of their computer than ever. We got into video conferencing. Everybody started doing video conferencing work. And for a team like ours, which is a distributed team, we have employees all around the world, and it kind of boded well. It normalized the way that we do business today. Everybody's on Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, things like that. And so in some ways, we have kind of the pandemic to thank for that. It's accelerating tech and accelerating the way we do business.
So you got me thinking you looked at other businesses before you looked at Mouse, right?
Sure.
That's what you said. And they were all SaaS companies though.
Yeah,
right?
all SaaS.
So all within one. Just take me down memory lane a little bit, because you probably don't even know this. I think I might have told this story on the show once. So after I sold my landscaping company, came into business with Dad and his Aspire Management company, the dream was to own a company together, right? Because Aspire Management was really his, and at the time his business partner Andy Kuhar's. And Dad and I, before we looked at EPI, we looked at a chain of workout facilities, right?
Okay.
So like a fitness center,
like gyms,
fitness facilities.
Sure.
We looked at a non-medical home health care company.
Okay.
Right? Before we actually offered on the fitness chain that was here in Cleveland. Thank God the deal fell through, because I'd much rather be doing what I do today, and I'm not like your model fitness guy. So it would be kind of weird me owning a chain of fitness centers. But nonetheless, that was interesting too, because we looked at 2 to 3 businesses before we came back to EPI and said, this actually kind of fits the mission a little bit better, and kind of fits because Dad had the methodology and stuff.
Right.
So after going through and looking at those couple of businesses, what made you fall into Mouse? Because you hadn't been in the exit planning space, and Mouse was an Australian company.
Yeah, you're right. There's kind of a disconnect there. But before I answer that, I gotta dig in, because
oh boy,
yeah, I gotta turn this back around, because you're in the same position. So why you made these offers, right?
Yeah.
And you said you were kind of thankful that the one fell through.
Yeah.
We had a similar experience. We made some offers, and it turns out what was really good that one of them fell through. That company actually failed to sell 2 more times after we talked to them.
Yeah.
So it was good that it didn't work out. But in your case, what were the things that you're looking at? Why did you pass up on the the gyms and so forth?
So, I'm an athlete, so the gyms were kind of natural. Dad's always been kind of certainly an athlete. The guys run marathons and all that stuff.
Right.
And even pushing 64 years old, he's a pretty active dude. He was just in a spinning cycling class at the rec center, right? But so I think that was like, if you think about those types of businesses, it was all things that, if EPI included, all things that I think were uniquely important, right? So with our aging baby boomers, and then maybe the generation before them, the traditionalists, non-medical home health care, I think, is critical, right? People are busy. People don't necessarily want to put their folks in a nursing home or assisted living home, especially if they don't need that kind of care. But having somebody that could, do some dishes, get them out walking, maybe administer some general medicine, make sure they're doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
That was non-medical. That was interesting. That was also part of a franchise, so we kind of liked that model, a little bit of a foundation and a base.
Sure.
But a need. We liked fitness because we're both athletes, and I think the fitness craze is even still going on today, right? So I think fitness was always good. And then when you looked at EPI, now we had Aspire Management, and we were involved in the exit planning institute as members, but we knew value growth, we knew M&A, and we knew that Dad, coming out of the SEPA program in 2008, took the concepts that were being taught and made it like methodical, made it a process. But he was just running that with his own clients. So can we speak, teach, and write at EPI? Can we capitalize on some of the baby boom and traditionalist kind of aging demographic and their needs, or can we capitalize on the fitness trend that was going on? So 3 totally different things.
Very different, yeah.
But nonetheless, I think we actually even looked at a publishing company because Dad always wanted to publish a book.
Which he did.
Which he ended up doing. But, so yeah, the non-medical home healthcare just didn't work out, right? It was just, we got pretty deep. That just didn't work out.
Okay.
Fitness facilities we offered, and it's actually a great M&A story because it was one of those smaller micro-market deals that was represented by what he framed himself to be as a M&A advisor, but was really just a real estate agent.
Okay.
Right? So, and I think this is for anybody in the M&A space, right? We combat some of this, right, where people come in and think that they could broker a business deal knowing that they've sold a bunch of real estate before. And it's like you're not just like putting lipstick on a pig, like painting the shutters, mowing the lawn, trimming the bushes, maybe putting in some new carpet and selling this thing. A business and a business owner's life is much more complex. So that ended up falling through primarily because their broker was like, okay, we're like, this is not going to work. I felt bad for the owner too. But nonetheless, we fell back into EPI and here we are today.
Yeah, so you had some why nots, but you had some pretty good whys too. But at the end of the day, it sounds like the EPI why was the strongest.
EPI, I think, fit the passion a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like for me, I loved working with a bunch of business owners, even if it was like indirectly through a bunch of advisors. Like I always thought CEPAs at the time were innovative, entrepreneurial. The profession was growing. When I would hang out at the conferences that we had back then, you could sense that vibe. And then Dad really liked speaking, teaching, writing, content, and he had that methodology, right? So he had something unique. So I think the blend of both really kind of fell into EPI. I know something that we knew the most, right? Like, again, I'm not like the best specimen of fitness, and I don't know a damn thing about non-medical home healthcare, but I do know how to host events. We did understand exit planning and concepts, and we liked that EPI at the time was also like almost like an infant, right? Like it was still kind of a concept. They had 120 CEPAs,
right?
So we could really make a mark. So yeah, fell into EPI.
That's great. Yeah, and I, in comparison, I have a really similar story, and that's kind of why I wanted to dig into that because I got the sense that you kind of had a similar journey. We had, obviously a little bit more focus with Bomb Diggity Ventures, which, by the way, I never gave you the explanation
Bomb
for
Diggity.
the name. Yeah, so Bomb Diggity. I mean, I don't know. I had been saying that since I was kind of a kid.
Yeah, you're a kid,
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's the Bomb Diggity, and then there was even a song. I think. Okay.
I think there was a song.
It was Blackstreet. I think made a song called "No Diggity, No Doubt."
Yeah,
any
right.
hip hop fans out there? I don't know if you guys.
I'm pretty one-laned on my music, but I think I did have that CD.
Okay, yeah, No Diggity or No Doubt, and so that kind of helped make it stick. I think a little bit, and so when we put together the buying group, I wanted it to be a little bit fun, and so
it is very techy.
It is.
That was a great name for like a
you think
tech
so?
investment.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Perfect.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Definitely.
So we wanted to do tech investment, so we called it Bomb Diggity Ventures. That's the full name, which I think is pretty fun. But we had a similar kind of journey. We had a little bit more focus, in the sense that we knew right up, that we were looking for a B2B SaaS company. We had a little bit more parameters around it. But like you, I think we were fortunate to have some deals fall through. To
get to the right one.
That we came to the right one. We had some stuff that we liked, but ultimately, of all the things that we did, we liked Mouse the best, and I'm really happy that we did it. Why Mouse? How did we end up in this particular space? For me, it had kind of been sort of always a side passion. It's difficult to do M&A, full time and not be an M&A advisor, right? You're going to get into the industry fully, but we started 2 companies with the intent to sell. I think we're talking about the trends in the industry that you're seeing more of that. Certainly, I think we may get into this more later, but the boomers in some respects had to be kind of taught and convinced to sell their company, and kind of in some cases kind of pry it away from them because they just didn't want to give up. And so, whereas younger generations, and in particular, I think in tech, tech was maybe one of the first ones. After we started seeing the .com explosion in the 2000s and on, and you started seeing Pets.com go public or whatever, and they had these huge valuations and tremendous upside. the buy or the grow and sell fever, I think, was hot in tech maybe before it was in some of the other industries. So even during when I first started up back in 2000s, early 2000s, 1998, 99, we were already thinking, build to sell. That was kind of our thing. So we had kind of our M&A hat on, and I was talking valuations and multiples of EBITDA, as a 23-year-old. So and having done that, one time and then getting into it again with the second business and exiting that one, and even we held that business for a long time and had many offers, 6, 7, 8 offers, something like that at the time, real offers, to sell, and we ultimately, didn't sell until much later. But what it did give you is a pretty interesting perspective on kind of how M&A works. You get offer after offer, you start to kind of see the pattern. You're like, oh, okay, you start learning, multiples of EBITDA and, what really counts and what's the difference between a strategic buyer and a PE and all these kinds of things. You start kind of getting the lay of the land a little bit more. And I was always intrigued. I was always kind of passionate about it. Everybody's excited about it. You start talking about selling businesses for millions of dollars. That gets a lot of people interested. Even people, non-business owners are kind of like, what now? Millions of dollars. That sounds.
How does this all come together?
That's intriguing, right?
I think the interesting thing for you though is, so you've been both a seller and a buyer.
Yeah.
So when you sold the first 2 companies, did you take any of that into perspective when you were the buyer of Mouse? And were you sensitive to Peter, who was selling his baby, knowing that you've also sold a company too?
Yes,
right?
For sure.
I always say that your baby's ugly, and I think a lot of buyers go in and they just forget that, like, Peter started this thing in '92, man. And like, he's really evolved and seeing the profession. And then in 2021, you're coming in as the profession. What did you call it yesterday in our meeting? Like it's like
luminary.
Yeah, luminary. It's not as a luminary anymore. It's more solid.
Yes.
It's more foundation. It's like
more foundational. Yes.
So with that in mind, were you a little bit more sensitive to the seller or Peter's needs and wants?
Absolutely.
His baby. Right?
Absolutely. I think we endeavor to be a dream buyer for our sellers. And if you go to our website, bombdiggity.ventures, right now you'll see some of that info on there that we really care about your baby. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that we definitely had it turned out it wasn't really necessary with Peter, right? Peter Hickey, obviously, he knows all about M&A, and he's a pretty sophisticated guy. And if you told him his baby's ugly, he's like, I read that book, and I read Justin's book. He knows, he knew all this stuff already. So he could have taken the beating, but, we still, we didn't want, obviously that's not our MO. We didn't want to go that way. I did appreciate, all of the history, especially with a company like Mouse, that's got a long history and has such a foundational part to play in the exit planning space and into the future. And so, you kind of want to be the shepherd, the safekeeper of that.
So that was kind of an attractiveness factor, right? Because we always talk about readiness and attractiveness.
Yes.
That kind of history was actually quite attractive to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw, that we were, kind of the de facto a leader in the space, with that sort of
with that kind of status.
Yeah, with that kind of status, and the so far down the path relative to the competition in the sense that we had a fully fledged platform that had been developed for a long while.
So then talk about the other side. So you're looking at this business to potentially buy. Where's the opportunities that you see? Because I would say that it's a pretty attractive business, right? I mean, it's the leader in the marketplace. Yeah. So where was the opportunity too? So your tech mind gets going.
Absolutely.
Where do you're like, man, we could do X, Y, and Z. What was that attraction?
Yeah, I'd say there's kind of there's 2 answers to that. I think there's an M&A answer, and which is I think what maybe a lot of the listeners would want to hear, and then there's sort of the passionate answer and the go forward answer. And so what had attracted us to it, was we were looking for certain criteria. Obviously, right? We wanted companies that could grow and scale and be independent in that micro market. There's a lot of folks who are involved with larger businesses. They're an add-on to some larger platform, like a Shopify or a eBay or something like that, where they add on to somebody else's stuff. And we wanted obviously something that was going to compete independently, and so that was part of it. But the M&A side in terms of what we could add to it was like we looked at that they had penetration into the U.S. market without a lot of U.S. presence. We had significant number of U.S. customers outside of the Australia, New Zealand, the kind of APAC region. And, we thought, gee whiz, we could do a whole lot more with that. And that's a strategic expansion. The other one, of course, was that I'm coming from a software background. So Peter Hickey, one of the sort of the foundational kind of visionaries in the space, providing a lot of the concepts that we use today, things like, business attractiveness and the 6-point scale, the common sense scoring mechanism and, all these things today that we kind of take for granted and have become sort of commonplace. Peter created a lot of these concepts, very early on. We liked that part of it, that we could take the foundational knowledge that Peter had and turn it into software. We could take the software side and sort of run with it. That was kind of what we could spin. I think Chris said the best acquisition. He had a couple podcasts ago. He said the best acquisition is where you can do a purchase and then put your own spin on it. And that was for us. We said, okay, we can move to the U.S. We can take all of this foundational knowledge that's built in there, all the goodness that Peter created over the years, and we can really develop it as primarily a software tool. Right. And it's been interesting because I think the landscape has moved on from figuring out what value acceleration is, and the concepts have been well understood. A lot of contributors from different in Australia, of course, a bunch of folks here in the U.S. side, have added everything in. I think we're at this point now where we're well established on what value acceleration is, or what
in which we go to
exit planning is, right? And it's more about generating awareness, but the foundational pieces are in place. And we're excited about kind of advancing it, going forward from a tool vendor perspective, from a software perspective. And so that's kind of the M&A answer, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I think, for us, what we, is, expand to the U.S. and provide better software tools and do these kinds of things. That's our strength. Michael, our director of sales, calls it, kind of being that finishing carpenter who's going to come in and sort of polish things.
Yeah.
So we like that. But I tell you, post that, kind of stepping away from the M&A and talking about the passion side, I think what's great about our industry is that, despite it being kind of, 15 years old, I don't know where you want to kind of put the starting point. You could kind of go back even further. But properly, if you look at, your guys' purchase of EPI and, kind of where the industry is now, we're still kind of in an infancy in some ways.
100%.
Like I feel like this industry is like still just getting started.
Yeah.
And for me, passionately is thinking more about like, okay, how can we really make this thing, in kind of everywhere, right? In every home, every business owner is talking about exit planning, and it becomes commonplace. There's a huge opportunity with newer generations. We talk about Gen X and millennials. Like we started at the top of the show, are more likely to start thinking about these things early on. Boomers kind of had to be a lot more educated. And I think, today millennials who are starting businesses are already thinking, about exit. And so there's just a huge opportunity, and I'm excited about moving the market forward, in general.
I think it's always interesting hanging out with you because we're actually pretty aligned, like even the stories of how we came into both of our companies and stuff. But when you say that, the note that I just wrote down, and I started to talk about this a lot given the market change, right? We see now, we used to talk about 10, 15 years ago, 60% of the privately held companies in the United States were owned by baby boomers. That's now down to 51. Rising up, right, as people that are like the top end of the millennials through the Gen X, so 36 to 56 years old, that group owns 43% of the market. And when people start to talk about it today, and you just gave me that kind of aha moment again, where can you imagine if you were 25 years old starting your first company, but you did it with value acceleration methodology in mind, and you did it along using a tool like Mouse to help guide your valuation, your readiness, your attractiveness, your personal preparedness, right?
Right.
How much, and that's all you knew. So it would be more like me, to be totally honest with you, because I always say, I honestly get a little frustrated when owners don't get it, because I'm like, this isn't hard stuff, guys. Like, what actually is hard about an owner learning value acceleration is the change. Because you're like, dude, I'm pretty successful. Now you're telling me I got to totally change the way I'm doing stuff.
Right.
You got to totally change the mindset. You got to involve this personal, financial. You got to go from income generation to value creation. That's the hard part, is change. But now imagine in this new market that we're in today, that is, I still think, like in like an infant mode, where you are 25 or 30 starting your company, but you do it with the value acceleration methodology in mind over the course of 10 years. So when you're 30, or when you're 40, or when you're 45, 50, how much more advanced you're going to be.
Yeah.
In terms of value creation and the balance and blend that you bring.
Right.
So I just think that's what I'm after, right? I'm after value acceleration methodology being taught at a college level. So when I take that intro to business, I'm learning value acceleration in part.
Right. Absolutely. And it could breed kind of a whole new type of wealth generation that's more middle class wealth generation in a way, right? Because in traditionally, exit planning, or even if you kind of look at it really traditionally, going public, right? That's the way you would been able to kind of monetize. You would take your business public, because private market transactions were sticky. They were harder to do. Smaller businesses, less well qualified and quantified than some of our bigger players who go public, right? Yeah. And so how do you get wealth out of your business? And if you as this exit planning, paradigm and people's understanding and awareness grows, there's going to be more opportunities to build businesses to sell,
right,
and for you to, do multiple exits, like somebody like me, right? So I'm on my third round, and generate more wealth, over time, and have that be kind of sort of the foundational basis for wealth creation, and sort of people who are moving, up from the middle class. If you started, let's just say you were a Amazon seller today. And we're just talking about, I think, somebody who makes manufactures these trash garbage cans, that you are for your car, and they just like attach to your seat or something.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And they get attached to like the headrest or something, and you put the trash. And he's wildly successful at that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, you hear this all the time about Amazon sellers, people who have become, really wealthy, making, millions of dollars, and to your point, they could really turn that into a lot if they were doing value acceleration, if they were thinking about exit planning right from the start.
So talking about value acceleration, so you're about a year into the purchase of Mouse, and
2 years.
2 years. Well, I guess back then you were about a year in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then you decide to become a certified exit planning advisor.
Yes.
So that I would assume, right, opens up a whole nother round of ideas for you. How did that impact your, as you've now 2 years in, how does that impact your knowledge of our industry, the formation of Mouse? Because what I'm going to get to after we take a break here, after you answer this question, is now you're into Mouse and there's a whole rebrand, right? So today we see a brand new Mouse.
That's right.
So, but talk to me, what was the effect of the SEPA program on you? Did it give you a little bit more? Because you're not necessarily an advisor, right? So
no, was not an advisor.
A tech entrepreneur.
I'm a participant.
So, so I think it's always interesting to have an owner like yourself go through, because you guys just see it in a different light.
For sure. Yeah. I'd like to think I was coming to the table with a little bit more insight than the average bear,
Sure.
But at the same time, for sure, there was some eye-opening, right? In my mind, I was familiar with exits like, private equity and strategic buyers, right? Those were the kind of the obvious. But, some of the other types of exits, like the ESOP stuff, there's a whole, course or part of the courses on, ESOPs, for example, different types of exit planning, different modes of valuation. I kind of gravitated to the, regular rule of thumb, multiples of revenue for rapidly growing companies, or multiples of EBITDA for companies that are profitable, et cetera. I knew that multiples in the software space, but maybe, less familiar with some of the multiples in the other industries and things like that. Was just really kind of an expansion of knowledge and some ahas. You maybe had some, an inkling about some of this stuff, or some, basic insights, but, obviously going through the SEPA program greatly expands, kind of your understanding of the overall market, and, comparing notes with people who are, advising in, say, manufacturing. You're like, oh, okay, that's a totally. I mean, in some ways, I'm manufacturing software. We're all manufacturers.
That's fair.
But comparing notes with the folks, on the manufacturing side, and kind of what they go through, and that was intriguing. Kind of getting out of my comfort zone, which is a kind of a small world, into the wider world of exit planning and the different industries.
What about estate planning? What do you think about the personal financial side?
Yeah, the personal.
As an owner, I would assume that kind of blows. Well, first off, probably wildly technical.
It is wildly technical.
You know?
It gets, and there's a lot of legal stuff in there too
Yeah,
that I don't,
right.
I still don't know very well, right? I don't know that I was just talking with Darren Cherry from Focus CFO, who was here with us today. And, he was schooling me on, gifting through trusts, and that the current limit is, 11 million or something, so, there's still a lot, to learn, and there's a lot in that space. I knew some of the basics in terms of, you create a trust, you put your stuff in a trust,
of course,
try to protect your assets, these kinds of things. But certainly, you getting into that estate planning stuff, and that can be very deep, right? There's a lot going on.
What I would assume too, sitting in a class of potential buyers, it also gave you probably some insights into their pain points and desires, right? Because going through that 1 week SEPA program, you're like, I'm surrounded by another 100 people that potentially could be my customers. So it had to give you some insights into their life.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it from that angle too. Of course, being 6 months, a year into it, you're thinking, okay, well, where do we fit in this space? And you're kind of comparing notes with, this is what we do, this is what's being talked about. Okay, this is relevant for us, and of course, right from the beginning, you're thinking, where can we make a contribution?
Right.
Exactly. You're looking at, all right, well, this is the status quo, and you're thinking, all right, we can help there, or that's an interesting problem that they just mentioned, or something like that. So it was a kind of a path of discovery, widening your view, understanding more of the kind of the broader industry and where we fit in it.
So I want to take a quick break, and after that I want to get into kind of how you've put your own touch onto Mouse, because I was talking to you yesterday as well. I think that Mouse has really become a tool that can power the entire value acceleration methodology, but also power us getting to the methodology. It's one of the biggest questions we get at the SEPA program. All of this technical stuff sounds good, but how do I get someone into the methodology? So I think you have some solutions for that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that next. Give us a quick break. We'll be back in a quick minute.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Aaron from Mouse. So we just kind of took a journey from kind of through the kind of tech career and now into Mouse. And I was saying right before the break, I think one of the cool things about, even in similarity to EPI, we knew there was a nice foundation. The business was still kind of in its infancy, and Dad and I could put our own touch on it as well, which came to be the value acceleration methodology. And I think that if you are a longtime SEPA and knew the Peter Hickey version of Mouse and now know the Mouse today, I think it has revolutionized. I think that it's a trendier. Wow. It's today, literally, the perfect example is like I'm looking at my email today, and Peter sent me the value acceleration methodology and showcased where Mouse fits into each gate. And then also said what I was saying before the break is also showed how Mouse can help advisors get into the methodology or help their owners get in. We were talking about this a lot yesterday too. I think one of the biggest hurdles that people have is I just need some conversational tools first before we dive into the triggering event. It's the biggest hurdle, I think, for many advisors.
Right.
So you kind of, not only have you changed something as simple as the color scheme, the lettering, instead of capitalized letters, it's lowercase letters.
Yes.
And so the whole vibe is different and different good. So talk to me about all the cool stuff over the last 2 years that you've done to the product and to the business that we now see today that maybe a lot of our listeners don't know about, because for the first, when they come out of a SEPA program, they just know you today.
Yes. Right. What would have been up to?
Yeah. What have you guys been doing?
Boy, there's a lot to unpack there. Let me see if I can cover some of it. But
highlight it.
There's a lot. So Some of our team actually has been advocating internally that we should talk more about some of the transformational stuff that we've been doing internally.
I agree.
And, we've just kind of been, it feels like we're just doing the necessary stuff.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, it is a lot, that we've done. So one of the biggest things coming out of the acquisition was that we were now immediately an international company, right? So we were an Australian company. We kept everybody in Australia. And then we just started expanding into the U.S. also, which meant that, we need to be able to do things like run payroll in 2 different places with totally different laws.
Yeah.
They, obviously the Australian system for healthcare and retirement.
Was that a learning curve for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Had you done, maybe you've done business internationally.
Yeah,
but for me,
no,
I guess
not at that level.
Okay, yeah,
not at that level.
So although we have SEPAs in 18 different countries, I wasn't setting up healthcare and payroll in Australia.
Exactly.
That to me has felt owner to owner. Like, talk about complexity. That had to be learning.
It is a lot, and it was a lot of double work, right? In the sense that we have separate entities, to employ people in Australia. We have an Australian entity, and this is I felt like we had a lot of the problems of a Fortune 500 company, despite being a small company. In the sense that we had to worry about foreign currency and selling in foreign currency and permanent establishment risks in foreign countries. If you employ enough people in a foreign country and in the right capacities, then you become that. Become a foreign entity, right? And so if you're a U.S. company, even if you're a U.S. company but you employ, a dozen people in Australia, let's say, then you become an Australian company. And then that means your investors are now exposed to Australian tax law, right? So it becomes a very big, right? It becomes a very big problem. So you start thinking about what they call permanent establishment risk, which is that, you're going to become, you become a permanent establishment in another country and they're subject to their laws. Well, you got to avoid that. So we have to create, you have to create separate entities and do it all legally in the right way. And it was a lot, digesting that was a lot. And it was one of the more challenging things I've ever done was kind of becoming an international company and having, banking. Let's just talk about banking, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to work in multiple currencies and pay people in multiple currencies. We have vendors that we pay in Australian dollars. We have vendors we pay in New Zealand dollars, and we intake. We even did a deal off the back of our internationalization. We've done a deal with Samoa, who is this island nation off the coast, the east coast of New Zealand, and they deal with Samoan tala. And so we sent a quote out in Samoan Tala, which enabled, which was, right, and that's
wild.
It is, and that was kind of enabled by our internationalization exercise that we went to, and that was all new because, even though like EPI is today, doing deals internationally as a foundationally American company, we were an Australian company that was selling internationally, but always in traditionally Australian dollars. So that was something entirely new we had to add to the business. Was to become internationally focused, and that was a huge challenge. So internationalization was big, a lot of stuff there. And in addition to that, it was operational, right?
Yeah.
One of the things you realize is, especially if you got, employees in, different countries and different entities and all this stuff, streamlining and operational efficiency is king, right?
Yeah.
As a CEO, as a business owner, like you said, it sounds nightmarish. How do you deal with that?
Right.
And it's like, systems, right?
Yeah,
We talk about this all the time, processes and systems. And so we spent, probably longer than we wanted to. We thought maybe it was going to be 6 months. It was more like over a year, I think, right? It always takes longer than you think, right? So we spent a long time, getting all of these operational things in place so that we could be very streamlined and then ready to grow.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you add that to the U.S. expansion, adding team members in the U.S. and all of the stuff that came with that, revamping how we do sales, to be more modeled after a traditional SaaS company and kind of adopting the SaaS mindset. Start thinking about it in terms of MRR and stuff like that. There's a lot of change that we went through there in that period. I could probably do a whole podcast on that.
I think that was something that piques my interest when you say really establish that SaaS mindset. So when I think about the let's call it exit planning tool market, it's kind of crowded, right? And so I always say, if I was thinking, and I was talking to you about this yesterday, if I was thinking about what's one of my competitive edges in a market that has tools that people like certified exit planning advisors use, you've really leaned, not even hard, 100% into, I'm a software company.
That's right.
And you're not an educator.
No.
Right? So you say, look, we don't do education, but we do technology really well, and technology that can power, the value acceleration methodology. And I think that's respectable, because I think we were talking about it yesterday, I think it's very easy to lean into education, right? Because, again, coming out of SEPA, there are steps that you need to become more educated, and on the implementation of what is the value acceleration methodology.
Right.
And it makes a really nice partnership for us, because you say, look, that's what EPI does. Like, you get your education there, and if you want something that powers the value acceleration methodology, streamlines things for you, you come to us. And I think that's a competitive edge for you, because a lot of your competitors are also doing education.
Yeah, I think the way I see it is, it's kind of just a normal and natural transition for the industry. Like I said, we in the past decade, we've been kind of going through this sort of foundational exercise where you had different kind of visionaries and thought leaders in the space who were contributing things to what exit planning is. And I think we've got kind of the kernel of that now. We got the core of what exit planning is, and we don't need to do that anymore. Now what we need is people who are focused in participating in it and helping it move forward. And so, in terms of, I think we had a whole bunch of people. We have today, there's a bunch of companies in the space, tool vendors, who all started off as kind of visionary folks in the exit planning space. And, everybody, wrote a book. And everybody built some tools based on what they wrote in their book. And, but I think we're moving past that phase in the industry now. And we're on to like, okay, we know what this is. Nobody needs, there'll be many more books written about exit planning, but I think we have the core of it. I think we've got it figured out. And so now it's about, how do we execute on that? How do we deliver on the promise of exit planning? How do we make it commonplace? How do we innovate it? How do we innovate the space? And that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, how do you evolve it? How do you actually, to our earlier point before the other break, how do you actually take it to that 25 or 30-year-old entrepreneur so that they live it for the next 10 or 15 years, the way to exit?
Yeah, how do we
and then their next exit, right? Their boomerang exit. So they're going to sell like you. They're going to sell like you.
Sell and do it again.
They're going to do it again, and then you're going to sell and do it again. And you might do this, honestly, 5 or 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. But seriously, it is possible. Yeah, especially for a technology guy. I mean, the companies that are built to sell.
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So for the SEPA audience, can you just tell me a little bit about Mouse? And I think even particular for the old school audience that saw the Mouse of old, what are some of the new stuff that you've that might be coming or might be in the product today that you guys have built over the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, and I'll start with talking about a little bit our branding and kind of what we went through there with the branding exercise. Obviously, we look different in the market, than we have historically. We kind of updated it, we modernized it. We look more like a tech company now than we did in the past. We're very proud of the roots. Extremely proud of the roots that we have and the strong foundational knowledge that we built over 20 years. And so we know, all these things are our tools, and we have, hard-won knowledge in all of our software. And at the same time, we are happy to just focus on building the tools now and less about kind of establishing it. And so, we are more of a tech brand, tech-focused brand. And you'll also see that as a SaaS company, you talk about that SaaS mindset, right? The thing in winning in SaaS, competitors you can tune out now. Right. But the thing about winning in SaaS is, ultimately you have to be delivering real value and you have to have successful clients. Right, because it's a subscription business, right? And if you're selling a transactional product, as long as you can convince them to buy the product one time, you kind of won, right?
Sure.
But in subscription model and software model, people don't subscribe to stuff that doesn't help them, right? Yeah. And so ultimately, to be successful in SaaS, you have to deliver on the premise. You have to make people actually successful. SaaS isn't about delivering software; it's about delivering outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we aim to do. And our ethos as part of the rebrand is, we are we're making business advisors successful, making business owners successful, right? That is our foundational why. And so when we look at what we do, it's like, how can we drive that outcome from a tool perspective? What can we provide? What things can we put in their hands to make it possible? Yeah. And that's part of the big shift there. And you're going to see our focus, on those things. And we've already done quite a bit. have redone. We have our new exit planning module. It's called Value Max. We just relaunched it. Internally we're calling it Value Max 2.0 kind of thing.
Sure.
But it's brand new, and we've already started adding some innovative stuff to the space. It's got a brand new, fresh UI, new reports, and new tools, and including our one thing that we announced earlier this year. We're really excited with our partners and friends over at Business Valuation Resources, BVR.
Yeah.
And so with BVR, we've done a fantastic deal of integrating their data right into our platform for exit planning. So, the challenge we heard time and time again, and as part of an engagement was, I need to, establish some sort of, valuation. And we said, well, yeah, that's cool. There's going to range of value. There's a lower end multiple of EBITDA or revenue, and there's a higher end one, and you're going to be somewhere in here. We all learned this in the SEPA course, and it's in Walking to Destiny, and that's how you do it. And then it was like, okay, yeah, I get that, but like, where do we get these multiples from? Where is the low number? Where is the high number? How does it vary by industry? Obviously one's different than the other. So where do we get this data? And we said, well, there's lots of sources. We can point people at it, but ultimately we kind of realized like people need to have this right in the platform. And so one of the things that we did that was exciting is partner with them, and we think we put together kind of a breakthrough ease of use product that now anybody can provide a really good range of value and an assessment of where that company is in its range of value in like 15 minutes. Like it's really fast and easy to do.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, people in the audience, probably there's a handful of people out there scoffing at that.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I hear what you're saying. But the thing is, it normally was really difficult to figure this out, to get this data. And you would have to have a subscription to private markets transaction data, and you'd have to pour through it. And you're looking at MVIC numbers and things like that and quartiles, and it's complicated. And what we did is we kind of saw that there was an opportunity to make something that was much more approachable. And what we do is we kind of take that data, this high quality transaction data from BVR, who we think is the leader in the space in terms of private market data, and we roll that up into a very aggregate number that's much easier to digest. You can say, look, last year the multiples were this. The year before that it was this, and so on. And then we can say in the last quarter it was this.
Right.
And we even did a deal with them where we offer for free historical multiples across 18 different industries that give you the lowest kind of quartile and the highest quartile for any different industries in the last 10 years. So 18 different industries in the last 10 years. So that's a free resource that's built right in, courtesy of our friends over at BVR. And then we have a paid inexpensive option, which is just $250, which we think is a breakthrough price that you can create a valuation report for $250 that you can give to your client and sell it for much more than that.
Much more.
Yeah.
I smile when you tell that story, and I don't know if you know this, right? So now imagine, I don't know how young I was, I guess, I don't know, something like 10 or 12 years ago, right? I had sold my landscaping company and then took that year of wandering, right, where I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. And then Dad and Andy said, Scott, just come to our consulting firm. I think you'll like it because we work with business owners just like you. And I did find that fascinating. But my job there, outside of like business development and growth, was running. So one, Dad used Mouse, of the original Mouse product, to do the readiness and attractiveness assessments.
Very proud of that. Yeah.
Right. But Mouse of old didn't pull in the multiples like you're talking about right now. So talk about a breakthrough for all the new CEPAs who don't know any better, right? That's a breakthrough because, believe it or not, Aaron, I was the guy in the cubicle filing out Excel spreadsheets of multiples and going through these subscriptions that we had.
Right.
And putting together spreadsheets to say, okay, I think I have the range. Like we're taking out the extreme highs and the extreme lows, and we're going to kind of move into this section right here. And then I'd present that back to Andy and Dad and say, I think here's the range of multiples, if you will. But it was a hell of a lot of work, man. And this was 10, 12 years ago, too, where it's probably not even as streamlined today. And then we were taking that data and then integrating it manually with the Mouse readiness attractiveness assessment. So when you're telling me about the relationship, I'm like, man, I remember the days where I was literally sitting in our Brunswick office and making it happen, man.
Yeah, that was a pain in the ass process, right?
It would take long hours, too, man.
Yes.
I mean, obviously I was new, so it probably took me longer. It was a hell of a learning experience.
Right.
But nonetheless, yeah, I think definitely a breakthrough. So you could get those ranges and apply it to the attractiveness readiness scores. I mean, I think that's
I mean, cool. Like I said, we can look up your industry code in about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you plug it in, and you have multiple data over the past 3 years, and it's fast and easy. And then you can just plug that right into your assessments. You can say within a few minutes, this is the range of value for companies in your space, and then we do the assessment, and here's where you are in that range, and it's pretty straightforward.
All right, well, I need to take a quick break, so stick with us. We'll be back in just a minute, and we'll get into the evolution of exit planning.
The Exit Planning Institute is the authority in exit planning. With its award-winning process, the Value Acceleration methodology provides deep insights into how to help business owners create more significant companies while blending and aligning their business, personal, and financial goals. EPI brings together the world's most elite exit planning advisors to form the EPI community. The EPI community represents over 15,000 professional advisors worldwide, including its 5,000 certified exit planning advisors. These advisors include financial advisors, growth consultants, CPAs, attorneys, M&A advisors, amongst others, who come together to expand their knowledge, create and innovate, network and relationship build, grow their practices, and better attract and engage business owner clients. Join EPI today and gain access to the community, content, courses, credential, and conference that you as the professional advisor need in order to harness the opportunity with small to lower middle market business owners who strive to grow a company of significance, thus having a highly valuable and transferable company. Follow the Exit Planning Institute on LinkedIn and visit earnsepa.com to learn more about the community leading the exit planning profession.
Welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So in closing, I've been asking all of my guests this. It was kind of a theme, dates all the way back to our summit in May. And in May, my dad released Walking to Destiny 2.0. And I think we have better data than we have ever had. And I think we've seen the mindset shift of business owners. In fact, we launched the State of Owner Readiness Survey, the new surveys, and what we're finding in the regionals and in the national, that owners are kind of what we were talking about earlier on the show. The people in their 30s, 40s, 50s are much more inclined to think about exit planning. So all kinds of stuff. I keep sharing that. The biggest thing that hit me was when the owners were asked, what attention to date, what attention have you given your exit strategy so far? One of the answers you can select is top priority. So in the previous surveys, it was about 6 to 8% said it was my top priority. Now it's about 28 to 35%, depending on where you're at. That's huge. Yeah. Saying that as an owner, 35% are saying it's my top priority. So what do you think? Where are we going? Again, we talked a little bit about still, we're kind of still in although I think the foundation of what is exit planning has been set. Yes. We're still J-curving everybody in the space, whether it's the advisor, the partners that they use, the educators that they use. We're all the whole, and at least in my opinion, the whole thing is still, it's still yet to come almost. So where do you think we're going in this kind of evolution of our profession?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's and that's what, first of all, that's what's so exciting about this, right? We're going back to what we were talking off the top.
It had to be attractive.
About being attractive, it's just it's an exploding space with such huge promise and potential. In some ways, taking on the company feels like taking on the mantle of having to kind of deliver on the promise, of what is possible. All the wealth generation that we talked about and all the things that are happening out there or could happen is kind of incumbent upon companies like EPI and Mouse to deliver that.
Absolutely.
So I feel that awesome responsibility. And I think in terms of the future, it's going to break down from the two obvious sides. One is from the business owner's perspective and the other one's from the advisor's perspective, right? Looking at it from the business owner's perspective to start with, I think for one thing, I think we're EPI, and I hope the industry at large is going to continue to shine a light on exit planning and make it more in the mind of the business owner. And like you said, the percentages are in your survey are going up, and so they're going to be much more inclined to do this. And with that, I think rather than having it be kind of let us bring exit planning to you, which is kind of had been the model, whereas you were an advisor, you would have certain outputs, you'd have presentations, you'd have documents, you would take that into a client meeting and sit down and talk with them about it. And that still probably is the prevailing model, right? But if you look into the future and you see, people who are more savvy, business owners who are more savvy and aware of this, they're going to want to more collaborate. Right? They're going to be talking about this. This isn't something that you're going to introduce at the 11th hour anymore and come in and try to explain to them that, oh, by the way, you're not really ready to sell. Hopefully, we're going to have more educated, business owners who are going to be wanting to participate all along. Right. So, in the SaaS space, for example, this is something I think about all the time, right? We bought the company a certain multiple and we want to sell it at, another multiple, right? And we're going to be growing. So, hopefully that kind of mindset becomes prevailing. And then from that, as a tool vendor, that leads us to a path of, okay, well, how are we going to collaborate more? Rather than it kind of being like let me show up, I'm going to find out about your business and then deliver you a deliverable. Instead, we want to have kind of an ongoing engagement. And I think there's an opportunity for tool vendors like us to provide a platform where we can collaborate more efficiently. And it's more of a two-way street where the platform is the table where we sit down at, right? And we have the conversation there. So that's from the business owner's perspective, is I think there's an opportunity to engage more directly with them as time goes on. And we'd love to play a role there in connecting advisors to business owners and being a direct way to make the marriage. Then the second part is from the advisor's perspective, right? I think there's another thing there where we're still in our infancy and there's a lot to do. I think in the market today, most of the tools that are out there, maybe all the tools out there, really have been built with kind of the original vision of the value advisors who were in the market at the time that the inception. If you look at all the stuff that's been built, even stuff that's been built really recently, still kind of has this myopic view that all exit planners are the same and that they're all wanting to do these same types of activities. And what we see is, and we look at the membership and the CEPAs that are coming around, and there's diversity. There's a lot of diversity. There's all sorts of different people, and especially we see more wealth managers, we see more financial advisors, and these folks have entirely different engagement models. If you're a value advisor, you're charging fee for service. If you're a financial advisor, maybe not. Probably
you might
not.
be in it for the long haul, right? You're after the liquidity event,
right? And so your engagement models are different, and how you're gonna, because of that, you're gonna work differently with your client, and you're gonna need tools that work differently. I think that's a proposition that hasn't really come up yet, is that there's not differentiation in the tool market. And that is something that we have been thinking a lot about. And we started doing something about that this year with our, what we call inbound advisory. It's this concept that we can do advisory automation. And that we think will in particular empower, it works for value advisors and financial advisors, but it certainly empowers financial advisors to deal with many more clients. Financial advisors want to talk to many more clients. They need a bigger funnel, right? If you think about the percentages of people that you're talking to who are actually going to exit this year, or in the next 2 years, that number is probably a low conversion rate, right? If you talk to 10 people, how many you think are going to exit this year? It's like, gee whiz, maybe not any, right? But if you talk to 100 people, how many are going to exit this year? Well, okay, now we got a shot, right? So you need to talk to way more people. If you want to get more assets under management, you're going to have a much bigger funnel. And, so how do you manage a funnel of 100 people? If you're talking to 100 business owners, how do you manage that? As an advisor, like, that's daunting. I can't. But you kind of need to make the numbers work. So that's where a platform like ours can come in and help. And that's, we think, inbound advisory, where we've kind of shamelessly stolen the idea of inbound marketing, which is kind of the same idea. Leads come to you. We want to do that for advisory, where we can make these engagements kind of automated, and your engagement with the business owner, and that's going to enable you to scale. Right? It's going to enable you to have conversations with 50 business owners, every year, and still manage it without, spending all your time doing that. And so there's tremendous opportunity, I think, in the space to innovate and try to provide more tailored tools and solutions as the space expands and the types of CEPAs and exit planners change.
Yeah, and I think we'll learn a little bit more too. Again, we were talking about this the other day, where people are looking for case studies. But the big flood of CEPAs really came in 19 and 20. So if they then they took a year to get established, so call it 21. Now they're working with an owner, 21, 22, 23. Now we're in that 3 to 5 year run that we like to see. So I think guys like you and me and our organizations will learn a lot over the next 5 to 10 years. because now we're actually going to start to see business owners sell companies that have gone through the value acceleration methodology, use tools like yours,
Right.
use advisors like ours,
Right.
and have made a more of an impact. So I think it's actually pretty cool next 3 to 5 to 10 years.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to have to be on the journey here with you guys and have kind of ear to the ground as it happens. And see taking the early returns. As we. Like I said, we're still early in this thing. I mean, certainly there's all sorts of people selling and it's happening right now today. But as you said, the real value acceleration and fulfillment is still kind of ahead of us.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see what that looks like and continue to adapt and provide the right tools.
All right, man. Well, I think that's all we have for today. So thank you all for tuning in. Please subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. Thanks, man, for coming in all the way from Florida. I appreciate
Hey, man, it's
it.
my pleasure.
All right. We'll see you all guys next time.
Great.